before they stood behind podiums, before they signed laws, before they became faces in history books. They were just kids. And some of those kids had childhoods so strange, so intense, and so unexpected, you'd never believe they'd grow up to run a nation. This is the hidden side of power, told through the childhoods nobody ever talks about. Let's begin with a boy who learned leadership from trouble. Abraham Lincoln grew up in cabins so poor, the floor was dirt, and the windows barely kept the cold out. As a child, he had less than 1 year of formal schooling. 1 year. Everything else he learned by candlelight, reading borrowed books, and listening to adults speak. He carried books through fields. He read while walking. He read by firelight until his eyes hurt. And while other kids were playing, Lincoln was teaching himself how to become someone more than his surroundings ever expected. Then there was Theodore Roosevelt, a boy who once couldn't lift a chair. He was small, sickly, and constantly wheezing from asthma. Some days, he couldn't even breathe without pain. Kids picked on him. Adults doubted him. Doctors had no cure. So his father gave him one instruction: build your body. And Roosevelt took it literally. He lifted weights, boxed, rode horses, and forced himself into strength. The sickly child turned himself into a force of nature. And one day, that boy who struggled to breathe would lead armies and reshape America. But sometimes childhoods went dark early. John F. Kennedy nearly died before he ever lived. As a child, Kennedy suffered from painful illness after painful illness. Infections, dangerous operations, long hospital stays, and a pain so constant it became normal. He grew up knowing life could disappear suddenly. That knowledge never left him. It followed him into politics, into fear, into courage. Then there's Richard Nixon, a boy who grew up working before school. And after, Nixon's family was poor, very poor. He scrubbed floors in his father's store, worked long hours, and was often reminded that life wasn't fair and never would be. He watched his brothers die young from illness. That kind of childhood doesn't harden you. It carves you. And sometimes childhoods were strange, not sad. Franklin D. Roosevelt grew up believing he was destined for greatness. Tutors, servants, private teachers, a world built entirely around him. And yet, when he was struck with polio as a young adult, his childhood of privilege collided violently with reality. A man raised to stand tall was suddenly unable to walk, and he learned humility the hard way. But wait until you hear this one. Herbert Hoover spoke no English until he was 4 years old. He grew up speaking Quaker-style languages used only in his community. Then both his parents died when he was young, leaving him an orphan before he was even a teenager. He would go on to become one of the richest self-made engineers in the world before becoming president. A homeless boy in the White House. And then there's Harry Truman, who once wanted to be a musician. Not a politician, not a leader, not a president, a pianist. He practiced for hours every day, played professionally as a teen, and when he failed as a musician, he turned to politics. Imagine writing laws when you once dreamed of writing music. Then there's Barack Obama. Before speeches, before crowds, before history, he worked minimum wage at an ice cream shop. Before politics, he wiped counters. Before leadership, he scooped sundaes. Before changing laws, he learned how customers talk when they don't think anyone in charge is listening. That might be the most educational classroom of all. So what do these childhoods have in common? None of them were royal. None of them were easy. None of them were perfect. Some were poor. Some were sick. Some were strange. Some were lonely. But all of them were human. And that's the truth history rarely shows you. Presidents don't start powerful. They start small, fragile, uncertain, unaware. They become history long after being children. So the next time you see a leader giving a speech, remember, once upon a time, they were also a kid who didn't know what came next, just like you. If you enjoyed this dive behind the scenes of power, hit like, subscribe, and stay curious. Because history doesn't begin with a crown or a campaign. It begins in childhood.